Yes, that's right. It's the squeeze. I'm Logan Lockhart. That's Tyler Milliken. It is on Primetime Sports Talk, and it is episode 9. If you're watching, it's on YouTube. If you're listening, it's on all the platforms that you get your podcast. Just search up the squeeze, and there we are, presented by Primetime Sports Talk. Tyler, Red Sox, Yankees. Pretty good series for you. I don't know if
Woo!
they're saying the same thing in New York, though.
Oh my God, they're crying in New York. Aaron Boone. I think the hot seat's starting to it's getting a little warmer. The outrage. There's anger coming in at Brian Cashman for building a lineup that just, let's be real, isn't built for their ballpark. And between that and injuries and just a lack of energy, I look back at this Red Sox Yankees series and really the Yankees got the brakes beat off of them in just about every way. It wasn't like the Red Sox starting pitching was great either, which I think is even more of an indictment on their lineup as a whole. But then the Red Sox bullpen, balled out. And some of it was Garrett Whitlock really shoving it down against his former organization. Adam Ottavino doing the same. Hirokazu Sawamura, who was a huge pickup from Japan for the Red Sox over the offseason. Just a lot of guys coming through and shining. And it felt like whenever the Yankees punched back, the Red Sox lineup they weren't playing games, whether it was Rafael Devers with some big hits throughout the series. Listen, if you're a Red Sox fan right now, I don't know how you can be feeling bad. Alex Verdugo's diving, making nice plays. Had a little bit of a rough moment in Game 3, but overall, he's shining in the Bronx. That's what you want to see out of a guy who's one of your franchise cornerstones. Now, you can't be happy to be a Red Sox fan, but as a Yankee fan, I'd be scared.
Well, what about the rivalry, though? 2020 is, we'll just write it off, okay? There was no fans anyway. Can't really get the rivalry vibe. But 2019, a bit of a, pedestrian season series, I would call it. In 2018, they met in the playoffs. Okay, so we'll chalk that up as a win, I guess, in terms of a rivalry. But do you think it's renewed?
At the moment, no. And listen, I think there were some little sparks to it. Brett Gardner's comments before the series began, of him kind of just talking about Alex Cora, which can't blame him for feeling that way. But, I was posting on my Twitter and kind of clowning him because it's like, listen, you're giving the Red Sox bulletin board material. You're a struggling ball club right now. And what happened, Brett Gardner? You did absolutely nothing in that series. I think he walked once. I think that's all he ended up doing. So it wasn't impressive on his end at all. In terms of the rivalry, it's felt, to be truthful, pretty dead. Besides 2018, we saw the Joe Kelly, Tyler Austin brawl in 2018, which felt like, whoa, like this is what we've been waiting for. The playoffs were great. Alex Cora ended it with, we scored 16 runs in Yankee Stadium, suck on it, at the World Series parade. This year, the Yankees are going to have to be better. I think that's what it is, and I'm not saying they won't be. And I think there's a chance for it. You're going to see it over the final couple months of the season because they're playing each other so much. This series was legit the first time they've played all season. So there's going to be a lot more Red Sox-Yankees baseball, and there's obviously a little bit of bad blood there. It wouldn't shock me if something pops off, but the way the Yankees are going right now, they're going to have to be a better team to spark a rivalry.
When I think of the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry, I think about built-in individual matchups, right? I mean, we can go back. Let's go to the 2000s, okay? So 2004, that's A-Rod's first year as a Yankee. So I'm pinning it right away. A-Rod, Big Papi. How about that? That's a rivalry, okay? Manny and, Jeter. Okay, that's a rivalry. Okay, so you got all these built-in rivalries. What is it right now? I mean, is it Aaron Judge and Verdugo, right? I mean, Verdugo, last year was his first year as a Red Sox. This was the first time that he's played in front of fans. It was at Yankee Stadium, right? So maybe that is something that can potentially happen because I really root for this rivalry. I really do.
When this rivalry is going great, there's not a better thing in baseball. It's interesting because, I look at 2018 and obviously between Judge and Mookie, there wasn't anything, but it was two young studs of a franchise where it looked like, all right, obviously Mookie Betts didn't end up staying here with how the things played out, but, these should be guys who are in these uniforms for the next 10 years that go back and forth under the next chapter. Right now, it's a little bit awkward, and partially it's because we don't know how long Aaron Judge is going to still be in a Yankees uniform. There hasn't been a long-term commitment there that, anyone's looking at and being like, all right, Aaron Judge is definitely a long-term Yankee, especially with what's going on with the organization right now where they're seemingly hitting a wall from going to an organization that had a super deep farm system to not that deep anymore. Aaron Judge is still a great player, but he hasn't been healthy most years. It's hard to find that one-on-one matchup right now. And if I had to go one off my head, I don't even really know what direction I would go in. I think there's a better chance once Luis Severino gets healthy that it's, Chris Sale versus him. two pitchers, both who are at the top of that rotation. And obviously Chris Sale's coming back from Tommy John as well.
And Chris Sale's progressing really good, actually. I believe he threw a bullpen at Fenway. He hasn't faced live hitters yet, I believe, but that's coming soon, and then the rehab assignment will follow.
Exactly. The way I've heard it described is he's at the start of spring training right now, just about. Mid-August seems to be the timetable for him. The way, with Chris Sale and how everything's played out, some people, I don't know if it reached other markets or other fans and stuff like that, but there were a lot of people in the Boston market about a month and a half ago being like, where's Chris Sale? Why are the Red Sox handling it so slow with him? Well, did you see what happened to Noah Syndergaard? And, we're talking about a guy in Chris Sale who's over the 30 hump. He's not on the other side. And, the disrespect on Chris Sale's name has blown my mind over the last year. People forget, fastest pitcher ever to 2,000 strikeouts. This is a once-in-a-generation type of talent. And, Tommy John came. It's unfortunate. It happens to most pitchers. And, we'll see what he is this year when he comes back. First year really doesn't mean much when you're coming off a surgery like this. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's really bad. But they're taking things slow with him. I think it's the right route. He has 3 more years after this with the Red Sox. And I'm expecting, to be some of the best years of his career.
Guess who recorded the final out of the 2018 World Series? Chris Sale.
Yeah, and made Manny Machado go down on one knee, And that was a Chris Sale who, I don't think I'm alone in this. He was dealing with elbow problems for quite some time. We saw the different flare-ups over the years. And with that arm action, it's serious. And listen, a lot of pitchers over that age 30 push it off. We see it with David Price, where I believe at the time when he got his elbow checked out when he was with the Red Sox, they said, if he was 23, he'd probably have it. What does that mean? Yeah. That means the elbow is not right in some way. I think Chris Sale was in that kind of light. And overall, he needed Tommy John. I still think some of his best days are still ahead of him. Still some pride. Those two guys, Sale, Severino, who are going to be, going at each other for the next couple of years, that's what I turn to.
So because you're in Boston and there's a rivalry with New York, Boston, everything, Yankees, Red Sox, I think you're the perfect guy to look to get a temperature on the current rivalry. Now, I remember 2010 Winter Classic, okay? It's Fenway Park. The Bruins are playing the Flyers. And I'm watching that game, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the game, remember, this is a hockey game. All of a sudden, in the middle of the game, the crowd's chanting, Yankees suck. It's Bruins Flyers. You got Philadelphia and Boston. New York's not involved here. And they chant Yankees suck just for the sake of it. Now, would we still see something like that in 2021? Do you believe that fire is still there in that city?
That fire is 100% there. I've watching these Red Sox games. Sometimes it'll be the 6th inning. They're playing insert a team. I don't know, the Indians. And you'll hear Yankees suck for about an inning and a half. It's just part of that Red Sox fandom. You're always going to think Red Sox. The second team that comes to mind is Yankees. And even though it's not, that rivalry hasn't been consistent over, I'd say, the last 20 years, you still had the great moments, back in 2004. There were some moments in that 2007, 2008, 2009 era that weren't the same, but, they were kind of, the Red Sox going in one direction, the Yankees going another at that time. And then we saw in 2018, it came back. Is it as consistent as it used to be? No. I think part of that is an organization like the Rays stepping in, who both the Red Sox and Yankees have had moments with in recent years. But I trust me, there'll be more Red Sox Yankees moments. Brett Gardner said it. We don't like those guys. Okay. Let's see how this goes down the stretch. The Yankees aren't going to be this bad all year. And if, worst comes to worst, the Yankees may not be that good. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of try to edge them out on more of the, gritty side, taking it out if they're having a frustrating year down the stretch and the Red Sox are soaring.
Yep. You hear what Brett Gardner says, and I'm sure the feeling is mutual. And that's
exactly
it. Period. End of story, right? When you hear someone like that say something like he said. Now, just one more quick thing on rivalries. In general, I want to get your thoughts on this. And we didn't talk about this before the show because I want to get your organic thoughts on this in particular. So the CN Tower in Toronto, and you've been to Toronto, and you've been to the Rogers Centre. So you've been right next to the CN Tower. So they light it up in Montreal Canadiens colors. And of course, as you know, bitter rivals, Habs, Maple Leafs, okay? This is like Yankees, Red Sox of hockey. And because the Montreal Canadiens have advanced to the third round, they celebrate it by lighting it up in Montreal Canadiens colors, the CN Tower. That would be unacceptable in Boston, right? If they said, okay, well, you know what? The Yankees are a Northeast team. Let's bring the World Series to our region and the country. That would be unacceptable, right?
100%. I legit fans would find a way to destroy the city if that happened. Anything like you can't walk around with a Yankees jersey at Fenway Park without getting hassled in some kind of way. People just they won't deal with it. I've sat next to fans who were Yankee fans at Fenway Park multiple times. I've seen some, sometimes they leave. They just don't enjoy it. It's nothing where like it's violent, but it's the chirping. Just like you see in any, Red Sox game where you hear those Yankees suck chants. Trust me, if they see a Yankees fan, they're going to give it to them. But yeah, that's a different level there. I can't ever see something like that flying in Boston.
So what do you think about what happened in Toronto then with the hockey situation? Does that shock you at all? Like this is pretty bad, right?
100%. And listen, I don't know that community as well, that fanfare, but I know the fans of those teams are not like, they're extremely passionate people. So I don't know if it's just one of those things where it's like a lack of lack of feel for the city and everything going on. But yikes, man, I can't imagine something like that happening. And I'm not surprised it's caused the uproar it has.
All right, there you go. And that's well said. Kind of like reading the room, right? Tone deaf.
That's it. Like, when you're from an area, what sets the people off around you. And it's like they look for the number one thing that could piss people off. And they're like, all right, let's rock with it.
Yeah, the logic is they're the only Canadian team left. So let's cheer for them. I'd like to go tell some New York Rangers fans right now. I'm going to say, hey, the Islanders are playing tonight. How about you cheer for them? Bring the Stanley Cup to New York. They wouldn't like that.
Or Mets fans. Imagine Mets fans rooting for the Yankees. The only franchise that can't stand the Yankees more than the Red Sox is the Mets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's bring the World Series to New York. Go Yankees. No way. They would never say that.
Never.
Unbelievable. Okay, so let's move on from the rivalries. I thought that was a good tie-in, right? Because it's happening. And we just saw Yankees Red Sox for the first time in 2021 last weekend. Okay. Ke'Bryan Hayes hits a home run. He hits it the other way. He's kind of unsure whether it's going to be like a double off the wall or off the foul pole. And it turns out it's off the base of the foul pole, and he misses first base. Austin Barnes was the guy who caught it and said, no, he didn't touch first base. Challenge it. Dave Roberts challenges it. He's called out.
Number one, props for recognizing it in the moment, Austin Barnes. Listen, if you make a mistake like that, and I feel bad for Ke'Bryan Hayes because he is such a young, talented ball player. We see this year, he's only played, 7 games after everything that's happened with his wrist injury, the second game of the season. But, you chalk it up. Listen, the Pirates, it doesn't matter. That home run one way or another. They lost by 2 runs. Who knows? The game could have changed. It was the first inning, right? But ultimately, meaningless baseball for the Pirates. It's development. And this will be a lesson Ke'Bryan Hayes never forgets. I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday, so weird. Bobby Witt Jr. did the exact same thing almost. Where at Double-A, he hit a home run. It was supposed to be his 11th bomb of the year. He has like a signature skip he does at home plate. You see Fernando Tatis, Marcell Ozuna, some other guys have similar stuff. But in this case, he skipped over home plate. They went and tagged home plate after he had gone to the dugout. And it got ruled a triple. He was out. Obviously, it wasn't a home run. The chances of that happening twice in one day, weird stuff. But listen, these are young guys. You get caught up in the moment. For Ke'Bryan Hayes, he was hustling. He was running hard. I give him less blame. Bobby Witt Jr., yeah, dude, come on, you're at home plate. Like, that's the most important. Like, if you're thinking anything, there's nothing to worry about. It's a home run. Just step on the plate. But what are you going to do, right? At the end of the day, both are games that people aren't going to think about, 2 weeks from now, never mind, 2 years from now.
Exactly. Where would you rank it, though, on the all-time? I guess they're bloopers, right? I mean, touching first base might be literally the easiest part of baseball. So when you miss it, we're going to consider it a blooper. Where would you think these rank all-time in those?
Bobby Witt Jr., I'd put way worse. I'd put it probably in that top 10. But Ke'Bryan Hayes, it's right in that area. There's been so many weird little baseball moments. But this is something you'll see, on MLB Network for years. That is like, oh, you want to see the, funny plays throughout history, The YouTube compilations that are always in your recommended box. But it's definitely up there. It's not going anywhere. People will, laugh at it. But it won't be something where you think Bobby Witt Jr., Ke'Bryan Hayes, and you think of this moment. They're both going to have careers that go way past that.
So Clayton Kershaw won the MVP as a pitcher in 2014. Do you think Jacob DeGrom has a case right now to be the front runner?
Listen, the way he's going right now, he's on pace. Look, 0.62 ERA, 103 FIP, 14.4 K per 9, 1.2 walk per 9. 3.9 hits per nine.
Hmm.
He's untouchable. It's ridiculous. And we're looking at it right now. If we're talking ERA for a full season, if he even can be somewhat close to this, which is almost impossible, a 0.62 ERA, it's the lowest ERA through 9 starts for any pitcher in the modern era. Lowest whip for any pitcher through 9 starts in the modern era. This is the stuff you don't see every day. He's getting stronger with every start. Obviously, he had a couple injury hiccups this year, but he's bounced back perfectly. The velocity isn't going down. None of the stuff is diminished. And the all-time, ERA leader for the course of a season with the best is Dutch Leonard, who was 0.96, 1914. Red Sox pitcher. And if you really want to go back and see how different things were, 7.1 K per nine. So legit, Jacob DeGrom has more than doubled his K per nine. That's how much the game has changed today. And on top of it, you look at what he's doing at the plate. I believe he's hitting, in the high 300s. He has 3 RBIs this season. Yeah. 4 earned runs he's given up. He's given up 1 more run than he's helped knock in. That's MLB The Show. That's Shohei Ohtani. And DeGrom, no disrespect to Ohtani, DeGrom's a different level on the mound.
Exactly. On the mound, right? I mean, we can talk about it. The plate's one thing, but you know what? The year of the pitcher was 1968, they say. I think the year of the pitcher, part 2, might be 2021, right? The lowest batting average in the history of the sport was the New York Yankees in 1968. I believe, and this is on a hunch because I read it somewhere, and I believe I got this right, but the second worst batting average if the season ended today would be the 2021 New York Yankees. So here we are, and you're drawing parallels between Bob Gibson and Jacob DeGrom. The Yankees lineup in 68 and the Yankees lineup today. You're drawing all these parallels, and I'm thinking to myself, Jacob DeGrom embodies all of this, right? The way he's pitching. And I don't know if you saw that start he made at San Diego. But again, he's making guys look silly. He's making Manny Machado look silly. The slider, when you're throwing at 93, you're almost hitting 94 on it sometimes. Forget about it. Who's hitting it?
Nobody. And the stuff keeps getting better. That's what it's illogical to see velocity gains like this. But we know Jacob DeGrom was a late bloomer. He was a shortstop, a majority when he was in college and eventually transitioned. And we saw a late bloomer even in the minors when he was pitching. It's incredible stuff. And at this point, it's almost wild to talk about Jacob DeGrom because it's like, what more can you say about what he's doing? But every time he goes out, he's hitting another level. 3.9 hit per 9, that's something you would expect out of a closer who walks 4 guys every 9 innings. And he's doing this as a starter with pinpoint control. I hope the Mets start giving him some run support. It's been a little bit better as of late, but we know how bad it has been over the years. But a weapon like this in the postseason, that's no matter if the Mets barely make it in or what ends up happening, as long as they do, to have him starting a series, he can completely eradicate an offense for an entire night. And it's almost like you can bet on it.
Well, it gets a little scary for a lot of teams in the NL because if Noah Syndergaard comes back and he's healthy, then you're going to look at a situation where Taijuan Walker's pitching real well this year. Okay, he's really becoming a surprise player for me. DeGrom, Syndergaard, Taijuan Walker. Hey, I mean, you don't want to play them in a playoff series, right? DeGrom, you got your work cut out for you, no. Guaranteed. I mean, it's not even one of these things, okay? It's guaranteed you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, we're not even mentioning Marcus Stroman in that conversation. Yeah. How about Carlos Carrasco?
Yeah.
It's scary. This is scary stuff they have in that rotation. And, with Noah Syndergaard, I hate to say it, but it's looking like it's going to be really tight for him to make it back at the end of the year. And for him, he's going to be a free agent. So it's not one of those things where if I'm Noah Syndergaard, I'm going to force myself out, the last week of September and hope I can, force myself. You're not going to get in the rotation at that point. So is it you cling and hope you can be used in the bullpen in some way? Well, he has the stuff. I don't know if that's what you want for a guy who's trying to look for a free agent contract. And he's not going to get big dollars. We know that. It's going to be most likely a kind of deal where you go out, 1 year, good money, go prove yourself so you can get a deal a year later. But I wouldn't bet big on Syndergaard. We'll see what happens with Carrasco. But listen, the fact that they don't even need these guys to 100%, get back in order to still have a pretty great rotation speaks for what the Mets could be by the end of the year.
Yeah, 1 year, prove yourself, and it could be with the Mets, right? I mean, the Mets would absolutely be in the mix just to bring him back and see if he's developed under them, right? I mean, you can't just let him go and try to test it out in another city.
Yeah, and especially you've seen the success someone like Zach Wheeler has had after leaving the Mets organization, and they got a lot of bad press over that. Obviously, different ownership, different front office now. But watching those homegrown talents go and excel elsewhere, it's never good for your organization. Syndergaard's a guy who's really been part of the Mets, the face of the Mets. Let's be real, since he's got called up, and he's never really got to hit that full stride, for a lengthy course of time. I'd like to see it at least for one more year, even if he doesn't end up making sense long-term for them.
The Chicago Cubs, okay? They, in our minds, as just baseball people that aren't necessarily locked into the Cubs all the time, we have this perception that guys like Bryant and Rizzo, you know what, they're getting older, aren't they? Well, no, not really. Bryant especially, he was the MVP not that long ago, and he's not that old. But yet in our minds, it feels like an era is coming to an end. But the Cubs are playing really good baseball. What's your gut feeling on Chicago? I can tell you my gut feeling is that they're going to go for it here. The division's weak, and I can't see them dealing anybody. You know what? I know they gave up Darvish, but you know what, man? These guys won a World Series together. They're part of the core. They're part of the group that brought excitement back to Chicago, and I think they give it one more go, and that's it.
It's tough. I'm looking at where the Cubs are right now, and it's, we're in June now. They had a great month of May, one of the best teams in all of baseball. Chris Bryant on an MVP caliber pace, something we haven't seen from him in a couple of years now, and especially not last year when it was a full-blown disaster. He's made some really big swing adjustments. I believe his average launch angle has dropped by about 13 degrees. So he's really like spraying the ball, consistently making contact again, which is nice. Craig Kimbrell, vintage Craig Kimbrell, is right back in the mix. Anthony Rizzo's having a good year, not the prime years we once saw, but a good year. And Javier Baez has bounced back to be looking pretty solid. It's tough. If I'm where the Cubs are at, if I'm a fan, I'm kind of frustrated because it's like, if there was a time for you guys to click like this, it was the last couple of years when you had a little bit more on the roster. You had a Yu Darvish, who was a true top of the rotation arm that you could pair with Kyle Hendricks, who has not had the greatest year himself this year. But, they've been carried partially from Chris Bryant going off, Javier Baez, and that bullpen. The bullpen has been insane. Ryan Tepera, I know obviously you have some familiarity with him, but one of the best relievers in baseball so far. And I could see, I've seen it floated a little bit, maybe dealing at Craig Kimbrell and kind of clinging on to that Chris Bryant, that Anthony Rizzo, and Javier Baez. You can move off from a Kimbrell, and it's not the end of the world. And the contract doesn't look that bad at this point. Just to get something back, because to look at it and think, wow, all four of those guys might be gone and our farm system's considered on the thinner side, that's hard. And I can't picture someone like Jed Hoyer, who was, part of the Theo Epstein Trust. We've seen that same front office when he was with the Red Sox, Hoyer himself, trade Nomar Garcia-Parra in 2004. I feel like there's a move or two here, but I can't see it being Chris Bryant, and I have a hard time seeing it be Anthony Rizzo either.
Baez might be the odd man out in terms of this shortstop free agent madness. Baez can see himself included. I don't know if they're going to dish out the big bucks for Javi Baez, I got to say. But I don't see them trading him either.
No, and we've seen they kind of haven't seen eye to eye over recent years when they did have extension talks. I think when free agency does come, Chris Bryant's probably going to get paid somewhere else. I see a franchise looking at him and being like, listen, people forget how special Chris Bryant was when he was coming up. And we've seen it in the big leagues. It just hasn't been consistent. He could be the missing piece for a lot of franchises in this league. Anthony Rizzo, they've had some weird contract kind of back and forth talks through the media. And overall, what he means to that clubhouse, he's everything, It's just, it's a very weird situation. I think the Cubs, it's going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations that need to happen. But what they do right now, this, next couple months, will decide what the future is for that franchise the next 3 to 5 years. And if they don't do this the right way and they kind of cling to guys like the Giants did, you might see some really tough years where, we saw the Giants regretted not dealing in Madison Bumgarner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they waited too long. And with Chris Bryant, it doesn't necessarily have to be at third base with another team. He's actually a very versatile player. You can see a team kind of saying, all right, Chris, let's try you out on the outfield. Can you play first? Do you want to try? Right? You can see situations like that. So when people make their lists this offseason and say, well, they need a third baseman, no, it could be a surprise team that says we're just going to bring in the bat and work from it after that.
Yeah, listen, Chris Bryant could fit in a lot of places in a lot of different ways. If you're talking modern baseball players, superstar caliber bat that can play, in the outfield, multiple spots in the infield, You don't find that anywhere. Most superstars don't have that kind of versatility. And the fact that he's willing to drop his ego in that way, it's special stuff. It's one of the reasons I know the Red Sox were connected to him a little bit over the offseason. I don't know if it makes much sense, a couple months from now, once you have an outfield, Jarren Duran in the mix and Alex Verdugo. But hey, maybe they choose to go a different route with the Hunter Renfroe or something like that. I could see him going to an organization like the Red Sox that has that future mindset because he fits into, the futuristic version of a ball player.
Aaron Boone, is it justified for him to be on the hot seat? And how long does he have? Because I watched that series on the weekend and I'm going, oh boy. I mean, we know New York and we know that, you know what? It's not going to last long if it continues like this. They were losing 3-1 to the Twins yesterday. And there was one point in that game where I'm going, this could be Aaron Boone's last game. I mean, I'm feeling it now, right? The Yankees ended up winning, but I'm feeling it. Something's brewing in the air. You saw in the 9th inning, the 10th inning, when the umpires were getting on the Yankees, and Boone, he wasn't that into it, passionate. It didn't look like he was defending his guys, and I was wondering what's going on with Aaron Boone.
No, when you have your bench coach and your hitting coach being the main ones at the top of the dugout saying something, it's embarrassing. And, this isn't – you look at what Aaron Boone has done between the awkward conversations with injuries and him, creating storylines and problems because he doesn't answer questions straight up. Mm-hmm. The lack of energy. The first thing that comes out of his mouth after getting swept by the Red Sox and the Bronx is, we did some good things in this series. Dude, the wrong thing to say. If there is time for a wake-up call, you just got the beat or the brakes beat off you by your number one rival. Embarrassing. And even when he came out after, Mendoza was getting screened at, Eric Thames, and, guys are getting kicked out, doesn't even, if there's a moment to just go out there, get ejected. It's the 9th inning. Just spark it. Can't do it. And for a roster that looks continuously flat, I'm calling Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, there's no energy they're playing with. Gleyber Torres is another one. If it's not coming from the manager spot, where is it coming from? And if I'm a Yankees fan or that Yankees front office, you know who I wish I had in that dugout right now? Joe Girardi, who's over with the Phillies. And they may be having issues, but he's trying to light fires underneath guys. He's trying to push them. He's everything that the Yankees are missing right now.
I'm totally with you on Girardi. I think that he would be the perfect guy. It's a shame. He was only there in 2017. They let him go, right? It was a brilliant run the Yankees went on. A young team. They were a surprise team. They went to the Game 7 of the ALCS. And with Aaron Boone, it was tough to watch on Sunday night. He's walking in and out of the dugout. And then, okay, well, who's ejected? And who are you talking to? In and out, in and out. I'm going, oh, gee, it was tough to watch.
Who gives a damn? Go get yourself ejected. Your team just got 3 inches off the plate and they're striking him out. Go say something. It doesn't matter. Listen, man, the Red Sox were already sitting there. You've been beat up by them the last 2 days. You're on the verge of losing right here. You got to do something. You got to at least go out there and say, I didn't leave anything out there. And everybody's opinion on Twitter that night, he left something out there. And then what happens? The Red Sox surge back and take the game.
Yep.
You could have said it the minute that moment happened because you could tell the Yankees completely lost their composure there just because there wasn't any – they just didn't seem on the same page. Nobody was there. The manager was sitting there not fired up while everybody in the dugouts at the top of their lungs ready to go.
Yeah, and you know what? There was a difference in energy levels between the Red Sox dugout and the Yankees dugout. You can see that Boston dugout, they were pumped, okay? When that final out almost got recorded, the Yankees scored a run there in the extra innings. But you can see the dugout. They were halfway on there to jump on everyone, get a sweep. It's a big deal to sweep the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. You can see they gave a damn. And on the other end with the Yankees, I don't know what was going on. And it was tough to watch. So you know what? At the end of the day, we can talk about Girardi all we want. But at the same time, I bet you there's Yankee fans who are going to watch this and say, you know what, guys, shut up. We didn't like Girardi. We were happy he got out of there. He overstayed his due here. So I don't know. But I'm just saying this, and I'm with you. If Girardi was here, it would look a little different.
Yeah, those guys would not – you wouldn't have a guy in Giancarlo Stanton who's acting like he's 39 years old and can't play the outfield anymore. Stuff like that, it's just embarrassing. What is the reason Giancarlo Stanton can't play the outfield? Mm-hmm. I'd love to know that he can run the bases and be fine, but he can't go stand in left field. Instead, you have Miguel Andujar out there who can't even catch a fly ball. But it's embarrassing.
He's not an outfielder. I mean,
no, but like that's where they are because they have a bunch of guys who are not willing to push the envelope, a bunch of guys who are just, they miss months at a time, weeks at a time. Aaron Judge, all these guys in the mix. And some of it's, bad luck. You see an Aaron Hicks go down and stuff like that. I'm not trying to reduce the injuries that have happened, but it's a fragile and soft team all the way down to the core. And you just continue to see it come out in different ways.
I think you're enjoying this. I think
Oh,
you're really
I love
enjoying
it.
this.
Listen, and this is coming from a guy. I've said it on the show. I've said it to other people. I thought the Yankees were going to take this division easily this year. I've changed my tone on that.
Yep. So where are you now on the division? You've changed your tone to what? The Rays?
Yep. The Rays will take the division. I think the Red Sox are sitting in second. And listen, the way the Yankees are going, I think the Blue Jays, if they haven't even hit their stride yet. George Springer coming back and all these different things, getting fully healthy. And listen, I see a gear for the Blue Jays right now that I'm not sure the Yankees have, but I think what the Yankees end up doing at the trade deadline, they might be forced to do something just because Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone are going to get rained down on.
New York's ace, Garrett Cole, now at the center of this ongoing conversation that never seems to go away. And another week went by and another bombshell, half bombshell. Okay, well, the real bombshell hasn't been dropped yet. And we both know that. There's something to come. But again, now, cheating, it's going all over the game. Now everyone's under this understanding. Okay, Garrett Cole is at the center of it. What do you make of Spider Cat?
So I felt a little bit bad for Garrett Cole, right? Because this is an issue going across the sport right now, but he's kind of been put at the face of it because of what Josh Donaldson has been saying and some of the videos that have been coming out. But the more you dive deeper into it, you think about the Brian Harkins lawsuit that's happened with the Angels clubhouse attendee who, got kicked out of baseball. And Garrett Cole was hitting him up saying, can you send me this concoction so I can have a better grip on the baseball? And the more you think about it and the more you look at it, this is something that's been going on for some time. It seems like he's one of the pioneers of taking it too far, if I should say that. And we've seen what Garrett Cole, the difference from when he got to Houston in 2018 was insanity. We knew Garrett Cole was a really good pitcher, but it hadn't been unlocked towards the end of that Pirates tenure. It kind of fallen off. He had been posting 4 ERAs the last couple of years there, but he gets to Houston, it's a sub-3 ERA, everything changes. Now, that is not me telling you, everything the Astros did had to involve, foreign substances and stuff like that. Their pitching ability in terms of, bringing guys out and developing them, we're seeing it right now, how good they are at it. But it's part of it. And I think with Garrett Cole, he's someone who's really leaned on it to some degree. Justin Verlander is another guy who got mentioned in that lawsuit who had a resurgence when he got to Houston. But if I'm Garrett Cole right now, you had the worst answer you could have had at that presser. You looked like you were about to crap your pants. He looked terrified. I couldn't believe it. It's like he never thought about how to answer that question. Someone was going to hit you with it eventually, and he just seemed unprepared. And what he said, it was fair, but there's a such thing as just, dude, baseball's trying to figure it out right now. Leave it for what it is. He almost left the door open a little bit too much there, and now it's another kind of chaos disaster for that Yankees team.
Exactly. Now he's opened the door for guys like me and you to talk about it nonstop. And that's
number one storyline.
Number one storyline. Everyone's talking about it. I've seen shows. They're not even sports shows. They're talking about this. Okay, so I guess from that perspective, baseball's in the news. Oh, yeah, good stuff. But, I mean, this is not a good look.
The way I look at it is when we think of steroids, right? We think of Barry Bonds. We think of Roger Clemens.
Yeah.
When we think of foreign substances 20 years, 10 years from now, Garrett Cole will be one of the first guys that come to your head. Is that telling you he was, the only guy doing it? Hell no. There's hundreds of pitchers who have been doing it, just like there were hundreds of players who were doing steroids back then. But unfortunately, when you get paid to be the most, the biggest pitching contract in general of all time, when you are the Yankees ace, when you have been, part of so many big moments, this is what happens. And at the end of the day, he has his accolades and everything, but we've seen it. There's going to be an adjustment period coming for him. We saw it against the Rays. The RPMs dropped off, and he got rocked. I think it's going to be a growing period, not only for him, but a lot of pitchers in the game.
And didn't Trevor Bauer's RPMs drop in the last few starts? I don't know. The last start, definitely. He has to be considered the ringleader in all this, no?
It's interesting because he was the one who tipped it off a little bit with the Astros initially saying they're putting stuff on the ball. But ultimately, it looks like Trevor Bauer, who admitted himself, you cannot increase RPMs without a foreign substance. He said it in a documentary he did with HBO. But and he said it was actually worse than steroids in that same quote. Yeah, he's another guy who's going to have those problems. And when you look at it, listen, his almost Cy Young caliber year, the RPMs were way lower. You could tell he probably wasn't using something back then. But listen, he just got the highest annual average salary by using this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pitchers that are about to go through some growing pains, and you're going to see numbers drop off. And while it sucks to be those guys, it's better for the game. I hope the MLB can do it the right way. I still think there's going to be problems here and there, but at least the fear is finally being put in guys, and it's taken way too long.
Exactly. At least there's something that makes people be reluctant on the mound about cheating and thinking that it's easy to do. You know, I forget about whether it's okay or not. I'm talking about the accessibility to it, right? Now, the MLB, they have an opportunity here. If there's concrete evidence against a guy like Trevor Bauer, and he's the ringleader, and he's benefited the most off of it, I believe, they can make a big example out of him because they can take his words. He says it's worse than steroids. Oh, really, Trevor? Okay. Here's what we did to the steroid guys. Watch this. They can make an example out of them if they really want.
It's hard. And, you know, when you start looking at the ringleader and who to blame, it goes in so many different ways, right? Like, do you go all the way back to Clay Buchholz? Do you go, you know, Michael Pineda, those different guys we saw, you know, years back now? It's just so slippery. And ultimately, I feel like the MLB won't be able to take the proper punishment or be able to really hang their hat on, or not hang their hat, but go after and punish these guys because they let it go on. Ultimately, it falls on Major League Baseball because just like they didn't step in with the steroid era where they hoped the players would police themselves, they did the same thing here. For Trevor Bauer, though, guys like Garrett Cole, listen, these pitching science, a lot of this different stuff, a lot of it has involved, you know, foreign substances and different grips and stuff like that. And it's going to change things. It's going to change things in a big way. But, you know, the pitchers went too far. They did. And now it's about time the bats catch up. And I think that will probably be the biggest storyline you see in the second half of this year.
Absolutely. And, you know, the term ringleader, I use it, but I use it lightly. You know, we definitely need to grow up. And, you know, if you're going to scapegoat one guy.
But he's the face of, but he's the face of pitching science, right? Like when we talk about guys who are really out there and, you know, trying to make YouTube videos and different things, you know, pitching ninja, right? Like all these different things that have come out of this era, these are the faces of it. And ultimately, when you're the face of something, you're going to think of Garrett Cole. You're going to think of Trevor Bauer. And, hey, whether they choose to own it or not, that's on them. But we're seeing they're reluctant to. You know why? Because it's a ding on your legacy. It'll be something that's brought up when we have Hall of Fame talks.
Hall of Fame talk. It happened with the Astros, right? The Astros scandal came out. And what was one of the first things we talked about? It was, the Hall of Fame, Altuve. He's not going in anymore. Forget about it, right? So here we go again with the pitch of the foreign substances. I actually watched Pineda at Fenway. I believe it was from 2014, was it?
Yep,
and
2014.
I watched that last night just to kind of remind myself about that whole thing and thinking, wow, I wouldn't have thought 7 years ago that this would have been as hot of a topic as it is now.
And it's different though, right? Because I haven't seen it in a little bit, but he had the pine tar like right here on the neck, and it was like but it was straight pine tar.
Yeah.
The issue today is there's concoctions. People are mixing different things to try and get there. Now, that was a case where Pineda went too far with just the pine tar. Listen, it's okay to use some pine tar. That's not the problem here. A lot of hitters said that for years, but now why are hitters stepping up like Josh Johnson and saying, whoa, you guys are cheating us because you took it too damn far? And that's where we're at now.
Yep. And you know what? If they're going to take money from, let's say, younger hitters, minor leaguers that are coming up, they're trying to make their name in Major League Baseball, but they can't hit anything. Okay, what's the difference between that and sign stealing for the pitchers, right?
No, you're right.
Yep. And you know what? Yeah, go ahead.
You look at hitters back then, it was like, listen, I'm hitting 230 over here, and this guy next to me was hitting 230 last year. Now he's hitting 280 with 45 jacks, and, you know, he's about to get a huge deal. Listen, pitchers think the same way.
Yeah.
This guy who was a fine number 3 or number 4 starter has turned into a number 2 or a number 1 because he's starting to use some stuff on his hands. You expect players to sit there and say, I'm not going to do that same thing when I could get myself $100 million contract, not only to change my life, but my grandkids and my great-grandkids. It goes back to the MLB. You think players can police themselves and stuff like that. It never works. People are always going to take it too far.
Hey, listen, I just hope that one day we can get back to where the contact guys are getting paid big money. That's what I want to see again. You know, and David Ross, manager of the Cubs, he's talking about it a little bit. He wants to see a guy like Whit Merrifield. He wants a guy like Whit Merrifield to get paid big money in free agency. And, you know, an example.
those guys are my favorite players to watch right now. Alex Verdugo is another guy I'd throw right in there. Nick Madrigal, guys who know how to make contact and play the game in a little bit of an old style way. But I think it's going to make a comeback. And while there'll still be power hitters and you have a generation of hitters that, listen, they were taught to basically swing for the fences because contact rates continued to drop because of stuff like this. It's going to take some time for things to bounce back. I think we'll see an immediate bump where the offense, improves. But I think it'll take a couple of years before you really see contact hitting become, a main part of baseball again. Maybe 5 to 6 years. It might take the next generation.
One last thing. Should we be talking about Jesse Winker a little more? Another 3 home run game? What's going on here, Tyler?
Absolute freak. And we're talking back to August 6th, I believe, last year. He's near the top of every single baseball, offensive category. In average, he's second. OBP, he's fourth. Slugging, he's first. Stolen bases, or not stolen bases, weighted on base average, 446 first. Weighted runs created plus first. Like, this is a guy since August 6th of last year, arguably the best hitter in all of baseball. And for someone like Jesse Winker, who was a top prospect then, we were waiting year after year. Injuries popped up and kind of derailed him. It's coming together right now. And listen, we all know Great American Ballpark, right? It's a little bit smaller, but it's so much fun to watch as a whole.
I love 3 home run games. I remember Josh Hamilton in Baltimore once. He had a 4 home run game. Carlos Delgado did it once. I mean, you get those moments, but he's doing it multiple times. A 3 home run game. I mean, come on, man. That's unbelievable.
It is. And it's nice to see for a Reds team who, they don't have the, enough talent, I think, to be at the same level of the Cubs or the Brewers or even the Cardinals. But that offense, when they get going, they get going. And to see him and Nick Castellanos kind of just hitting bombs and going back to back like that, it's a blast. But, I hope it continues. We saw Scooter Gennett do it for a couple of years, and it was fun to watch at that time.
Yeah.
I think Jesse Winker's here to stay. At this level, I'm not sure, but I still think he's going to be one of the better hitters in baseball for the next couple of years.
That is The Squeeze. That was episode 9. I'm Logan Lockhart. That's Tyler Milliken. It's on Primetime Sports Talk. If you're watching, it's on YouTube. Again, if you listen, if you like your podcast, search up The Squeeze. There we are. Your baseball fix every week, presented by Primetime Sports Talk. Hey, don't be too nervous about the Bruins. Don't stress me out now, okay? Big game tonight.
Oh, I've been sweating all day. That was all we talked really on air today. The Tuukka Rask versus Jeremy Swayman conversation. Who do you got? Rask is starting tonight. I'm not feeling overly confident, but it's the Bruins. I think they'll definitely force a Game 7 here. Then anything can happen in Game 7. But at the end of the day, whether this ends up being Tuukka Rask's last game in the NHL or, he said he doesn't want to play for another team outside the Bruins, you got to ride with the guy who, while he's dealt with injuries, he's who he is for a reason. And you live or die by that sword. If not, you turn the page and you go to Jeremy Swayman next year. But you ride with Tuukka until the end here, and let's see where it leaves you,
You got to trust Rask to step up. Big elimination game. I wish you the best of luck. Enjoy the game. Have fun. That is The Squeeze. We will be back next week on YouTube and on all the podcasts, every platform. Until then, here we are, signing off.